Co-call. This is co-call.
Wow, what a treat we have today. Welcome to Co-Called, everyone. My name is Carlos. I am your host, and I'm here with my beautiful wife.
Hi, everyone. We're so excited.
Miss Carolina, though she doesn't like me to call her Carolina.
No,
So
we established this last episode.
It's baby or moo or sexy or something. But we're here in our studios in downtown Orlando, and you guys are in for a treat today.
Yes. We are obviously in Lab 1, which means we have guests. And I'm so excited to welcome Mike and Anna Dow. They are incredible. I think we met a long time ago. I'd say
2013.
About 2013.
Yeah.
Wow. It's been a while. We were kids. We were babies. We didn't even have kids yet. I think we were newlyweds. We were a year. Almost 9 years ago. Yeah.
But here we are, Mike and Anna Dow. Welcome to Co-Called.
Mike, okay, wait, let me
Well, thank you
something.
for agreeing to be in here with us. I know you guys are big time and all, but thank you so much.
Stop.
We're so humbled.
So Mike and Anna are the founders of Burning Ones, and they it's an incredible ministry. Mike is an author. Anna is a worship leader. She's amazing. I would actually put the boys down to these old YouTube videos that Anna has up, or I don't even know, they're like on TBN, you singing at a TBN show or something. But she has the most angelic voice there ever was. But most than that, your worship is so anointed. You're just so pure of heart. And anyways, I love you guys and welcome. I'm so excited to hear your story because I know it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And we just know it's going to bless so many of the viewers. So thank you.
So to start off, briefly, just to kind of give you a brief on them. Mike here is a world-class CrossFitter. Can you say CrossFitter, or is that a shameful?
You can't say CrossFitter.
CrossFitter.
That seems like a previous life.
But this guy is probably one of the guys that's in the best shape and has been in the best shape ever. You were probably born in the best. You were probably born with abs.
Probably, yes. I agree.
But Mike, you did. You had a gym before moving here to Orlando. You're both from Florida, right?
We are.
Yeah. South Florida?
So Anna was born in Central Florida, and then I was born in North Florida.
North Florida. Yeah. But then you moved away.
Yep.
Got married, moved away. I know, and I'm rushing on to things, but we're gonna get to the nitty gritty of things soon. But
the nitty gritty.
Anyway, so Mike is a professional athlete, and now he's even a singer. Anna here is a brilliant singer, as my wife already said.
Yes.
But all right, let's get down to the. She's giving me the eye already.
No,
so let's move on.
Let them talk.
So, who are Mike and Anna Dow?
Wow, who are we, babe?
I feel like we've evolved into even who we are today.
Yeah.
So we're about to celebrate 15 years of marriage.
Wow. Congratulations.
We have 5 kids, beautiful kids.
So ranging from 12 to 9 months.
Yes.
So 12, right now at least, we're about to go through a whole swing of birthdays. We have 2 birthdays this month and then 2 birthdays in April.
Oh my.
So we just had a birthday in November. So our oldest is 12. Once we come through the birthday swing, it'll be 12, 10, 7, 3, and 1.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's what a blessing.
2 girls and 3 boys.
Blessing. And they are the most precious kids. We were just talking about them, but
they're also really good looking kids.
Oh my.
Thank God.
Thank you.
So 5 kids. Let me see. Mom and dad. Anna's madly in love with me.
It's true.
You could totally tell that, honestly. They got off the elevator and I was like, okay, there's love here.
Oh my. We were actually joking on the walk up. I said, babe, you don't have to buy me something for our anniversary next week. I said, there's a million other ways you can tell me how amazing I am. Like what a blessing I am to your life. Joking, obviously. But yeah, I mean, we're just I consider us to be really normal in a lot of ways. Real life. I mean, yeah, we lead a ministry. We've led a ministry for more than a decade now.
Yeah.
International reach. That does a variety of things. I mean, from crusade gatherings, conference meetings, churches, and I mean, we've established a publishing house. We're entering into the record industry, like music industry with Anna's music and worship projects and just things that we have going on. We lead an Israel tour, which is kind of cool.
Can we come?
Yeah, for
We've
sure.
been wanting to come to Israel. Well, I know he's been, but I've been wanting to go.
It's amazing.
I'm a little like...
We were in Israel together.
We were?
We were.
Yeah.
For the 2017 trip
Really?
in June. Yes.
Oh, dude, that was
Anna
a
and I
blur.
were there.
Right.
Yes. For you. Yes. Yes.
That's the year that everybody went but me. Even Mossy was there.
Yeah, Mossy was
Yes.
there. Yeah.
I tell Carolina, Israel is one of those places where I never wanted to go. I was like, why go to Israel? It's bombed. It's a third world place. And when I was there, I was like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
I want to come here every year.
Yep.
It's
Oh, yeah.
beautiful. It's like
Same.
you walk in the Bible. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming with you.
Yes.
Oh,
Let's
we
go.
would love that.
Thank you. We'll
Yeah.
host a co-called
Thank you.
podcast
Oh,
out
that
there.
would be so
That would be
cool.
in Israel. Yes.
From the Mount of Olives or the Sea of
Yeah.
Galilee or something.
I don't feel worthy.
That would be crazy.
That would be insane.
Yeah.
So you are, I mean, aside of ministers, you're entrepreneurs, your mom and dad. I mean, you guys literally have it all.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
we have a lot going on.
Yeah.
and you hold it so well together.
We
And
we were joking with somebody, I think last week, and said that if we weren't as administrative as we both are, because we both have like administrative, some people carry it as like a giftings. Other people have to like work real hard. We're both like naturally administrative, like creatures of habit, rhythmic, orientation, that types of things. If we weren't this way, our life would be a train wreck.
Yeah.
For sure.
It'd be a train
Well,
wreck.
you probably wouldn't be doing
There's no way.
accomplishing as much. Because there's one thing to be busy, but then there's another thing to be productive. And I think you guys have been very productive. Clearly, there's so much fruit from your life, even that we've been able to see from afar. So
Wow.
that's incredible. So how did all of this start? How did Mike and Anna's journey start?
So
Where did you guys meet?
it would have been 2002. In 2002, I would have been 20 years old, on the verge of turning 21, drug addict, drug dealer,
Wow.
broken, meaning like angry, suicidal, diseased. So at this point in life, I would have been in and out of jail 15 times, expelled from high school. My parents would have been divorced. My home would have been broken. I'd been living on the streets for multiple years. Not just in a gang type of life. Yes, there was the inclusion of those things, but even spent a period of almost 2 years like living out of my car. So really like rough street, like inner city, type living, which would have been radically opposite the way that I grew up. Born in North Florida, my dad was in the Air Force, so we did a lot of traveling. So from North Florida to Germany, from Germany to LA, from LA back to North Florida. And then he retired in Central Florida, in the Tampa area. So that's what would have put me in Central Florida, here for just years and years of brokenness and what most would consider to be like, in some cases, and it's heartbreaking, what some would consider to be like normal life, like addiction and violence and tragedy and, struggle. Early in life, I didn't grow up like a believer. I didn't have God in my life. We never went to church. My parents didn't forget like going to church. We didn't pray before meals. We didn't talk about the Bible in our house. I didn't go to kids' church or youth group or like none of these things. So we have like polar opposite upbringings and stories.
Yeah.
So from my side, right, this is the way that things would have been kind of like growing on my end. My mom and dad got divorced. A lot of brokenness there. By 20, again, I had been in and out of jail 15 times. I was diseased. By the age of like 16, 17, I sat in a doctor's office and found out that because of the way that I had been living my life, meaning just the pursuit of my own self-satisfaction, right, which I would consider is one of the worst forms of bondage, right? Being a prisoner to self-satisfaction, having no other goal in your life other than satisfying yourself. right? And so chasing down whatever is going to feed that craving, right? Those lustful desires in a variety of ways, not just always in a sexual outlet, although that was a very real part of it for me. But sitting in a doctor's office at like 16, 17 and finding out that I had herpes was devastating, to say the least.
Wow.
Right? I mean, to be in a place where you're already an addict, drug addiction, alcoholism. And when I say drug addiction, smoking weed, pills and powders and just all kinds of crazy stuff. So to be in a place where you've been an addict, right, for years and years and years, and just the brokenness that goes with an addicted life, out on the streets, selling, in and out of clubs, dealing, really rough inner city life, fighting and in and out of jail and just all of that types of stuff. So for this to be my story, and now to find out that I have a disease that's in my bloodstream, and to have the doctor look at me and tell me that because of the way I decided to live my life, that this was now going to be a forever part of my story. He said, because of the decisions you've made and how you've chosen to satisfy yourself, science has no answer for this. The medical profession has no cure. The best that medicine will ever hope to do is to suppress the issues or the outbreaks. He said, if you ever get a wife and are intimate with a spouse, it's 100% guaranteed that she's going to have the disease. By that transference, there's no way that we'd ever be able to catch a pregnancy early enough to make sure that your children don't have the disease. He said, so this is now going to be a forever part of your story. All right. So that just pushed me into a darker hole. You would think that finally it would have been like, listen,
up,
like,
come on.
Wake up, stupid. Like, you're ruining your life.
Right.
No, that wasn't the case.
Right. Because I'm sorry. I know you're saying years and years, but you're a kid. I mean, you're 17 years old. Like, your life hasn't even begun.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, yeah, for you to have that. I mean, you probably didn't even have the emotional maturity to understand that, hey, I'm ruining my whole life.
Did anybody know?
So initially, right, because this all started for me around like 11, 12, right? Like experimenting with drugs, experimenting with, sexual interaction and stuff like that. I think about it. I have a 12-year-old at home.
Right.
You've got zero chance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, no chance whatsoever.
You're literally a little lamb in a cave of wolves.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So when I got the diagnosis, I was so ashamed, right? I carried so much guilt. I felt so dirty. And I don't say that to create a shameful perspective for others that may be dealing with it.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's inevitable. Everywhere I share my story, every church gathering I've ever felt to share it, every stadium gathering I've ever felt to share it, it's inevitable. I have people come up to me afterwards and they're like, man, would you pray for me? Like, I'm going through exactly, what you talked about. And the Lord has been so gracious to touch people and heal people.
Yeah.
And I pray that he would do that, even for anyone listening,
Absolutely.
who may be battling with things that I'm talking about. But I was so afraid to share it with someone because of just the weight of what I knew I felt about my own life. Hearing forever is a heavy word.
Yeah.
Right? Like hearing no change possible is a very strong diagnosis.
Yes.
The weight that it puts you under, knowing that you have no power to change the condition of what you're going through. Right? It's a hopeless situation of sorts.
Right.
And so I remember everything just got more aggressive. The darkness got more aggressive. The suicidal tendencies got more aggressive. The violence got more aggressive. The addiction got more aggressive. I had no concern for living. And it's actually wild because this is in the season of life where we would have met.
Yeah.
Because it was in this season where I met a girl at a party that I would have been dealing at, who went to a church and who said, my parents will let me spend time with you if you start coming to the church. So this would have been the summer of 2002. 20 years old. Again, I described the condition that I was in, but I thought to myself, okay, great, I'll do whatever. And so I started going to church. No grid whatsoever.
Wait,
for
this was Anna
church.
was the girl?
I was not the girl. I
No,
was
no,
going to
no,
say
no.
that. I was going to say I was not the girl.
Okay.
People are usually confused. They're like,
Okay.
so you were the girl? I'm like, no.
No.
I was not
No. Party by USF.
Okay.
Anna was not the girl.
Okay.
I'm
I'm glad this girl who was
Yeah.
going to church was
For
at
sure.
this party, though.
For sure. For sure.
I mean, it's insane, right? Like God has a wild way of
Yes.
setting things up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
To accomplish really like his desire of pursuing us.
Yeah.
And there was just a wild series of events, and this would have been one of those. So I ended up at a church, and this culminated in what would have been October 6, 2002, where I came to a Sunday night service to fight one of the pastor's sons.
Stop.
Backpack full of drugs, standing outside the front doors, two of my friends there to fight one of the pastor's sons because he had looked me up and had reached out to my girlfriend at the time and was like, hey, have you checked into this guy's background? Like, man, this guy's a troublemaker. Like, he's trash. Like, he's always, in and out of jail. Like, man, he's been busted for like drug charges and like all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, like it was all true, but I wasn't
Right.
trying to necessarily hear it from him. And he was trying to ruin
Right.
what I thought I had going on.
Right. Well, it's that accusation, which is what we all know the devil loves to do is accuse,
Yep.
come and accuse.
Yep. So that night in service, he convinced me that it'd be better to fight after church than before church. So I was like, okay, bro. I mean, I'm be right out here in the parking lot. Like it's going to go down.
I'm gonna shank you.
Like I'm out here. You know what I mean? Like at that time, I had a restraining order from every club in Ybor City, just about on 7th Ave.
Wow.
A bunch of Walmarts, a bunch of malls. Because we just fought everywhere all the time. I mean, it was just crazy, like a walking time bomb. And so I was like, all right, we're gonna be right out here. We're gonna fight after church. And to summarize what could be a longer story, I ended up at the altar that night, not because I wanted to be there. The pastor closed out the gathering in a way that I was there for 10 years after this and never saw it happen again.
Wow.
He said, this is what we're going to do. He said, I'm going to pray. And then if you feel led to approach anyone in the gathering, just approach them and ask them if you can pray for them and bring them down to the altar. So, okay, cool. I'm sitting in the back. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, all right, this thing's about to wrap up. I'm going to destroy this dude's life in the parking lot. I got plans. It's a Sunday night. I got a backpack full of product. You know what I mean? Like I'm sitting in a church
Wow.
pew with a backpack full of product. Because at the time I was a small business owner, right? I was running a street
Right.
pharmacy.
Yeah, I mean,
Entrepreneurship
You know what I
was
mean?
in your veins.
Listen.
It's who I am, right? Like these
The business life.
creative.
You don't choose the business life. The business life chooses you.
So this lady came over to me. Hey, can I pray for you? Yep, you can pray for me. Again, I'm trying to do whatever I got to do to get out of there, just so that I can fight in the parking lot because we have plans. Like it's a Sunday night. It's a
Right.
big time night for us. And I end up at the altar. The pastor comes around. He's like, do you want to get saved tonight? I don't know what that means. He's like, no, really, do you want to get saved? I was like, okay, no, really. I don't know what that means. He was like, what? He's like, all right, do you want to ask Jesus into your heart? I was like, hey, man, the first question was bad. This one is even worse.
Yeah.
I was like, ask Jesus into my heart?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think at times, like when you've been in church for a while, you get so programmed, right? To believe it's almost like you forget where you came from, right?
Yeah.
Like the life
Yeah.
you used to live. Like people don't have anywhere on their radar, right? Like
Yeah.
Bible language,
Christianese.
You know what I
is
mean? Like
we call it.
Christianese, the
Yeah.
terms, like the lingo, like
Yeah.
like none of that.
Mhm.
I had no way to interpret what he was saying.
Right.
And I was like, I said, man, the first question was bad. This one is really bad.
Yeah.
And I actually said to him, I was like, why don't you ask me something I can understand?
Hmm.
And if you do that, then maybe we can get somewhere. I said, but I don't know what you want from me.
Mhm.
It's super funny, right? I'm at the altar. My hair is crazy long. I've always had it braided. 5 earrings, 2 eyebrow rings, 2 tongue rings. I got slashes
Wow.
in my eyebrows, like all this crazy stuff. And so he says to me, would you be willing tonight to lay your life down, to live it for God, to no longer live it for yourself,
Mm.
and forever from this day forward, make a commitment that that's how you're going to live your life, for God and not for you. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And he was like, what? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do that.
Wow.
He's like, you're really going to do that? And I'm thinking, I'll do whatever I have to do. This place is a circus. Like, this place is crazy. Like, I mean, it is wild up in here. Like, I just want to get out of here. I'm trying to beat the brakes off of this dude in the parking lot. And like, I didn't know that it was his son,
Oh my god.
so like, I'm trying to fight his son in the parking lot. And,
Wow.
and so I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And he's like, really? And I said, yeah, really. I was like, how do we do that? And he's like, okay, this is what we'll do. Like, I'm going to pray. You can say what I say, but you can say what you want. And I always joke and say I made the mistake of praying. But it wasn't the first time that I made the mistake of praying, right? Because there would have been months that led up to this moment where when no one else was around, right? The crowds had left, the extracurricular activities had ended, all of the substances had been used up. The partying was over. We had left the club, and I would walk the streets by myself, many times with tears running down my face. And by myself, I would look up into the sky at night. And I would say things like, I don't know if you or who or what is even out there, but this is what I do know. I do know that I don't want to be what I am. Wow. But I also know that I don't have the power to produce anything else. This is all I know how to be.
Wow.
Like, I want to change, but I've been rendered powerless to actually make that change. I don't know how to be anything else. I don't know how to do anything else.
Wow.
Like, this is all I know how to be. This is all I know how to do. This is the only life I know how to live. And the desire wasn't enough.
Right.
The desire wasn't enough. I realized I needed a power that I didn't have.
Wow.
And not to try to put it in like, these mystical type terms, but for real, I had tried. And I remember one night specifically. And so that night standing at the altar, it wasn't the first time that I had ever prayed. I just didn't know that what I was doing, you could have called prayer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Because I didn't understand the terms. I didn't know. And so that night, I prayed and just said whatever the pastor was saying. I don't even remember what it was, but I do remember that while I was praying, I came into the only way I know how to communicate it is like this visionary experience. And I saw this man and he was afar off. And when I saw him, immediately I knew that he was Jesus. I knew that he was alive from the dead. I knew that he was the Son of God. And I knew that he had paid for the sins of the world. But more importantly, that with his own life, he had satisfied the sins for my life.
Right.
And I was like overwhelmed when I saw him.
Wow.
And he turned and saw me and he ran in my direction and he rushed over and he grabbed me and he started, just as he hugged me, just speaking things over my life, which is crazy that I later found out were in the Bible.
Wow.
Because I was 21 and had never read the Bible before, that I later found out were in the Bible. And all that to say, this experience that seemed like 4 or 5 seconds was like 45 minutes.
Right.
And when I pulled my face out of my hands because I had broken down crying, I was, from that moment forward, what the Bible would call a new creation.
Yeah.
I was instantly, and this may be challenging for some to hear, but it's just, right, this is a term, it's my truth.
Right.
Right? Like, it's what happened to me.
Right.
I was radically and instantly a different person.
Yeah.
Delivered from drug addiction, alcoholism, perversion, rage and violence and brokenness, suicidal tendencies. Like, now I had to learn how to live that out.
Right.
But I was instantly delivered.
Wow.
Right. And I
Praise
think the difference is at times like we can be delivered, but because we don't know how to set our life up to consistently live delivered, a lot of times we forfeit deliverance.
Oh, that's good.
And we say things like, well, maybe God didn't really touch me. It's like, no, he did touch you, but now you have to learn how to set your life up to consistently live in deliverance.
Right.
Right? Because deliverance can happen in a moment, but then it can take you a lifetime to learn how to live delivered.
That's so good.
Right? To where you learn how to close doors and set boundaries and establish new relationships and, just on and on it goes. So I had to learn how to actually live it out. But what God did was real.
Yeah.
So then, to fast forward a little bit, 5 years later from that night, right? So I didn't fight the pastor's son.
Yeah.
Which is important to say.
Yes.
I did not fight the pastor's son. In 48 hours, I got cut out of every relationship that I had out on the streets.
Wow.
People thought that I was schizophrenic. They thought that I had lost my mind, that I had literally like OD'd and snapped because of how different I was. And they were in some ways like afraid and wanted nothing to do with me because of the level of brokenness and darkness that I was accustomed to. And now like this new version. So within 48 hours, lost every relationship I had, got baptized, got filled with the Spirit, got into Bible college, all within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Crazy, right? And then 5 years later, I end up marrying the pastor's daughter.
The same pastor that
The same pastor
prayed with you.
at the
you
same
were
church.
the pastor's it was your brother-in-law that you were gonna beat up. Oh my goodness. This is like the best
story's unfolding.
Bum, bum, bum.
plot twist.
So God definitely has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? Definitely has a sense of humor, right? So now at
Wow.
family functions and things of that nature, like
Yes.
we're all one big happy family.
Wow. Okay, that's like the best. I did not know.
So my brother-in-law is the guy that I thought I was going to fight that night.
Wow.
Wow.
The lady that wanted to pray for me was his mom, who was the pastor's wife.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like a whole family
They all
affair.
wanted to get
Yes,
you, man.
we all
They were like,
wanted- we all
"This
wanted
guy's
him."
mine.
I was like
What?
involved in my salvation
Wow.
story.
Oh, yeah.
So 5 years later, end up marrying the pastor's daughter.
Yeah.
Um,
But
Did
also
you
were
guys-
healed also, you didn't
so that's
share that
important to
part
say.
of the
I
story.
always forget this part,
Yes.
which is an epic part of the story,
Right.
by the way. So I get
Yes.
saved in October. In December, I end up responding to an altar call in a church service, just a Sunday morning.
Right.
The pastor's preaching about miracles. He makes an altar call, and I remember him saying, if you'd be willing to just believe God
Mm.
and come to the altar this morning, we're going to pray for you. So my heart's beating so fast, I thought I was going to die. I came down to the altar. I stood there. I was so ashamed. They asked me, what do you need prayer for? I couldn't even tell them. I was like, I'm sick and I just need prayer. They prayed for me. When they prayed for me, it felt like somebody dumped a hot bucket of water
Wow.
on my head. And I literally felt like something rush over my whole body. When I went home that day, I went to the drawer where I used to hide my pills. I used to hide my pills because of how ashamed I was.
Right.
I went to the drawer where I used to hide my pills. And when I went to take my pills that morning after church on Sunday, I felt a voice speak to me on the inside in my heart, just
Right,
like an
right.
inner knowing, like we all,
Right.
you know. And it said, you don't need those anymore.
Mm.
Wow.
And I wish I could tell you that it was this like immediate, overwhelming, like,
Right,
you know,
like a
moment of
movie.
victory, you know, like,
Angels came out.
yeah, like this whole Disney type. No, it was none of that.
Yeah.
It took me 18 months, almost to the day. Every morning I had a face off with the bottle of pills. And I said, God, I'm going to trust you one more day.
Mm-hmm.
And every morning I would look at the bottle of pills,
Mm.
scared, because I knew that if I went 1 or 2 days without the pills, the consequences.
Right.
But now I was almost 18 months without the pills, and I'm still looking at the bottle of pills every day. Like, I'm going to trust you one more day.
Right.
One more day, one more day, one more day. And 18 months later, I ended up throwing the pills away. And now, that would have been January 2003. Now, my blood report reflects that for almost 6 years, herpes was in my bloodstream. And now, doctors don't know why it's no longer there.
Wow.
They have no way to document medically
Wow.
how it could have been there for 6 years and now it's gone, because to them, their human intellect or all the, you know, scientific evidence,
Right.
ingenuity and things of that nature,
Wow.
says that there's no hope, that it's supposed to be impossible,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and it is supposed to be impossible naturally with man alone,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
you know, but I like to say the blood of Jesus gave me an answer
Mm.
that man hasn't found yet.
Mm. Praise
Right.
God.
And so Anna, who is the pastor's daughter,
Yes.
because we shared in the beginning that we've been married for 15 years. Anna is whole and pure and
Mhm.
perfect. Our
Yes.
5 kids are whole and pure
Praise
and
God.
perfect. And,
Wow.
you know, what science tried to say was going to be a forever part of our story
Yeah.
Right.
is now something that God is using as a testimony,
Yeah.
is now
Right.
something that we've been able to share all over the world.
Yes.
And many others, you know, have sent us testimonies on how God has touched them and healed them.
Right.
And now they're coming with their own, you know, evidence of how they no longer have it. And it's just, yeah, it's
Wow.
just been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's encouraging. I'm into so
I'm
many.
like shocked. I mean, I'm not shocked because I know that God can do this, and we've seen God, you know, do so many miracles in our own lives. But it just never gets old. It never gets old to hear of the goodness of God and the mercy of God. And then this is my favorite part: is that who knows? Like, you went through all of that, and now look at all of these other people
Come on.
now getting healed, the authority that you now walk in
Yeah.
because you were faithful to walk that out, and now other people get to also, see his goodness in that way and be healed and be whole. And now they'll go on and do the same for
Come
other
on.
people.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, you're going to get to heaven and meet people that you're like, who are you? I don't know how that's all going to work out, but I can,
Sure.
in my human mind, we won't know the impact of everything we're doing until we get to heaven.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, there's going to be someone that's going to say, well, you preached at this place and this place and this person and that person touched this person, and generations later,
Right.
Yep.
you just never know.
Now, during the 5 years before you married Anna, 5 years later, is that what you said?
5 years later.
During those 5 years, were you in a relationship?
No. So my part of the story is I grew up as a pastor's kid. So I'm
Yeah.
the youngest of 4. I have 3 older brothers.
Mhm.
So
Ooh,
Wow.
brother.
yeah,
You're the
3
baby.
I'm the
Oh, we
baby.
were special.
Yes.
Oh, we
Mike
were
has
special.
Mike has been fighting in other ways to
Yes.
keep me. But yeah, I grew up as a PK, pastor's kid. So there's almost a 6-year difference between Mike and I.
Okay.
So when he came to the church and he got saved, I was a lot younger. But the crazy thing is, I've growing up as a pastor's kid, you hear different stories, like what it's like growing up as a pastor's kid in ministry. Like there's a stigma that comes with growing up that way. But
Right.
I really grew up in a beautiful home. My dad is a man that walks in integrity. He loves his family. So I never had any of those like stigmas that you heard. So I loved being in church. I loved being there all the time. That's all I ever wanted to do. And so it's funny, like I feel like I grew up with these strong convictions. I say convictions, but like back then it was more like fear. Like I was like had a fear of God, like do not do that. Do not stray away. Do not drink. Do not do any of that, So
Right.
I grew up like I feel like in this bubble, like where I was just always in the church, always with my parents. But it's beautiful, like the way the Lord uses what he uses to shape our stories.
Yeah.
Because we're two opposite people, but yet how the Lord has brought us together has been so impactful, I think. Like even in our own children's lives, like the way we are able to minister to our children because of the lives that we have lived. Like it's
Right.
been so beautiful just seeing how the Lord has shaped that. So yeah, there was almost a 6-year difference, but I vividly remember the day he walked in to the church. Now, again, he
wow.
described what he looked like. He looks nothing like he looks like
Right.
today. It was very interesting. So I just remember, like, I had never had an experience like this before, but the minute he walked through the doors, I was sitting to the left of the sanctuary. And I turned my head to my right and I saw him. And immediately when I saw him, I heard the Lord's voice. Like never have I heard it so audibly like that since. Like, and I heard, that is your husband. And I was like, okay.
You're like,
Clearly,
come on. No,
you
Lord.
did not look at my list of what I wanted in a husband. Like, what are you saying, Lord? Like, and I just remember I think I was almost
You're almost 15.
I just turned 15. Yeah. I just turned 15 years old.
Wow.
So again, I had never had a boyfriend. Like I was just so like, I'm going to stay in my bubble. I'm going to stay right here. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to do this, do what I have to do, like, and just remain in this. So I heard this and I'm like, oh, like, but it was one of those undeniable things that you heard. And I was like,
Right.
I know I heard this. And there was actually a lady that was sitting next to me that attended the church. She was in her 30s. And I looked over at her and I said, I know this is going to sound really, really crazy. I was like, but I feel like I need to tell somebody this. And I looked at her and I was like, this is what I heard. And she was like, okay. I was like, that's it. Like, I just need to tell you that. So through a series of events, so we just remained friends, honestly. Like, I didn't know him for like the first year. Like, he was just kind of going through this. And I knew what I heard, but he had no idea.
Right.
So it wasn't until 2
I think
years.
it was like almost 2 or 3 years after
2
that.
or 3 years after that we actually became friends and started hanging out. And
Right.
I feel like I was carrying a word, but then like the word began to like evolve into something else. I really began to like have like likings and desires. Like, again, he had completely changed. So, yeah, it was just
Yeah,
really
she actually
interest-
didn't share that with me
Yeah, I didn't share with anybody. Like
Right,
there
so
was only one person that I told.
And this is really important, right? Especially for some. She never told me when we first started hanging out, like, I have a word from God. We're going to get married.
yeah,
Right.
never.
That's
That would
super
be
strange.
weird.
You know what I mean? Like, even if you legitimately feel that way,
Yeah.
like, it's important to understand Jesus has to be the shepherd,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? Like, he is able to shepherd our hearts and lives,
Yes.
to accomplish his word. You know, everybody that comes on super strong, like, I've got a word from God, baby. We're going to be
Yeah.
together. Like,
No.
it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So she didn't actually share that until our rehearsal dinner.
Yeah.
I didn't
We're
know
engaged.
until the
Oh, gosh.
night before we
About
got
to be
married.
married.
Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't share it with anybody. Like it was just one of those things. So I just waited like and saw how the Lord began to like form a friendship. He was being mentored by my dad. So he was around a lot. So he was like my dad's right-hand guy, always with him. So, I mean, obviously he was around a lot. There was a liking towards him, like beginning to develop. So then at like, I think 16, close to 17, I finally told my mom, I'm like, I think I'm in love. Like, and she's like, whoa, what's happening? You know? So anyway, so by 17, they made me wait because of our age difference until I graduated to even be in relationships. So
Right.
we kind of like hung out in groups until I graduated at 17, and then that was our first date.
So your home was there were a lot of rules.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
I grew up in a Christian home, kind of like yours. I'm not a pastor's kid, but it was a lot of rules where it's like, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. So I can empathize with the
yeah.
Yeah, Anna couldn't watch the Smurfs.
Oh yeah, no
Power
way.
Rangers were off limits.
Oh, yeah.
And I was a fan,
could
a
not.
diehard fan of the Power Rangers. I would sneak to my neighbors and like watch.
Because they didn't get saved till Carlos was already older. So it wasn't like he was born into
I was
it.
8, yeah.
Got
So
it.
he had to, they stripped things
Like,
away that he was
took it
already
away.
used to.
But this was amazing.
Yeah. Like, but what's wrong with the Power Rangers?
Did you know before you could be in a relationship that you guys...
Sure. So that's a great question, right? So when we started hanging out and we both realized, now she never told me again, which is important.
Yes.
So when I realized that I had started developing like feelings towards her, I really turned to the Lord because this would have been 24, right? 24 and 18. So at 24 and 18 and things were progressing,
Yeah.
I didn't want to get into a dating style relationship if the consideration of marriage wasn't going to be a part of that conversation. Because, and it's one of the ways that I counsel younger guys now, right? Younger guys, right? I just turned 40.
40?
I just turned 40.
Hi, buddy. You're headed that way.
We're all headed in the same direction, by the
How
way.
old am I?
No, you're going to be 3 years away. You're 3 years away from
I'm
40.
36 now.
You're going to be 37 in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I just turned 40 in September. So these younger guys, right? Early 20s, mid 20s.
Yes.
And I always ask them, can you see yourself marrying her? And they're like, what? I'm like, no, bro. I don't care. She's fine. I don't care. She's fun to be with. I don't care this. I don't care that.
Right.
Like, can you see yourself marrying her?
Vision.
And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, then you're spending time with someone else's wife. Right,
Tell 'em.
which is a big
Tell 'em,
deal,
Mike.
right? Because if it ain't going somewhere, right, you don't date because you're lonely, right?
Right.
Like two broken things don't make a whole thing,
Right.
Like that whole worldly equation is a lie,
Yeah.
right? Two whole things make a whole thing,
That's
right?
right.
Two broken things create a big pile of brokenness. You know, it's like
Preach that. Preach that.
so, I wasn't lonely. I really wanted to find like satisfaction in God. I had a bunch of terrible relationships. I wasn't trying to recreate, anything that was in my history because again, we have very different backgrounds. I wasn't trying to bring any of the nonsense, right, that I had been through into her life.
Right.
And so just the consideration of like, Lord, if this isn't going somewhere. So I committed to fast and pray. Right, which is amazing.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what, Lord, I'm just going to fast and pray. I don't remember how long it was.
Is that the first time you ever fasted?
So it wasn't, right? This is fun.
wasn't, okay.
This is super funny. I got tricked into fasting. The first time that I
me all
fasted.
the time.
Yeah.
Story of my life.
Like,
No, just-
I got tricked into fasting, which is super funny. But I committed to fast and pray, and I was like, Lord, I'm just going to fast and I'm going to pray, and I'm just until I hear from you. And what I noticed is day by day as I was praying, my prayer of desperation turned into more than praying and like, God, I got to hear from you. Like, what are you saying? It turned into like this confident prayer of like, Lord, I know she's the one for me. Like, and if you would work things out, and if you would help me, and if you would, speak to these people, and if you would, and so I remember stopping myself one day in prayer, like, wow, like I know, like it had changed. And I was like, I know. And I don't remember if it was 7 days, 8 days, 9 days. The length of days isn't important. I just remember the transition had happened.
Right.
And so at that point, I had set myself on a trajectory to meet with her dad. And, my mom has been in jewelry for 30 years. And so to talk to my mom about getting a ring and, how I was going to plan this, epic proposal and all this crazy stuff. And that really led into, us actually coming together, getting married, which would have been, now, like we said, almost 15 years ago. It's doable, guys.
Guys, what a story, honestly. I'm like still in chills with, everything that happened with you and how things happened with you and how even just things were aligned where you were going to beat up her brother, who's now your brother-in-law, your father-in-law and your mother-in-law were out to like pray for you, which like,
It's
again,
crazy.
it's like they're trying to invest in like this person, random Joe who comes in. And now, 15 years later, 5 kids later, ministries, businesses, a whole life, together. It's really amazing.
There's a couple of things from your story that I'm like, wow. One is you never know who you're investing in.
Right.
And
Yep.
like your father, your
absolutely.
father reaching out to him and could have easily been like, oh, it's some punk kid in our church, want a prayer? No, move on, and yet he invested and then taking him on as to mentor him and all of that, like not knowing one day this is going to be my daughter, my baby daughter, my one and only. We have same 2 boys and 1 little girl, and like I will tell you, that's daddy's little girl.
Yeah.
I have a sensitive question. I mean, it might not be sensitive. Did he, because he knew everything you came out of and everything that happened, did he have any objection where he was like, oh, heck no, honey. No.
So he almost had a heart attack when I met with him because I met him at Applebee's.
Like it's almost like you're great and I'm happy for you, but
Of course.
You're not good enough for my...
So it
this
is
is
real.
where you really have to test. Do I really love
It is,
Do I really trust the Lord? Do I really love people?
Right? Because it's super funny how fickle people can be.
Yeah.
And not her dad, but the majority of the response from just random
People around. Sure.
right, was like, how are you going to let your daughter marry somebody like that who has a past like that? It's super funny. These are people that are like my cheerleader
Right.
the day prior.
Right.
Because
right.
like, man, you've
Good
got
for
such
you.
an amazing
Prodigal
testimony.
home.
Yeah. You've got such an amazing testimony. You're in ministry. You're leading the
Right.
young adult ministry. You're the youth pastor at the church, pastor's right-hand guy, mentor group, yada, yada, yada. Like, and one day to the next, it's like, how are you going to let her marry somebody with a past like that? Da, 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 da. Anna's dad was really amazing. And that's part of the beautiful thing. When I asked him if I could marry her, he said, I know that this is from the Lord. He said, I've heard from God. Like God has actually spoken to me.
Okay, so he spoke. Oh my gosh. 1, 2, 3. I'm ready for you to tell me my mother-in-law was.
Yeah. He was like, God has spoken to me. He's like, I've actually prayed about this. I know that I heard from the Lord. He's like, I wish that it wasn't happening as soon as it was.
Right.
He's like, that's the thing. Because, she was young.
I was only
young.
19 when we got married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
18
really young.
engaged. Yeah. It-
25 and 19, when we got married.
Right.
And he was like, I wish that it wasn't happening as soon as it was. He's like, but I'd be lying if I said to you that I didn't know it was from the Lord. He's like, I know it's from the Lord.
Wow.
He's like, so, God is giving me grace to help me with the things that I thought would happen, in her life. But so they were really, really supportive.
Yeah.
I mean, really
and
amazing.
even my mom, when I sat down with her and I was like, I'm in love. Like she knew something. She's like, okay, this is God because I know my child. Like this
Right,
isn't
right.
who she is or operates as like just
Right.
every other day with any other person. So she was like, I really feel like this is the Lord. So they were great. But I mean, parents are parents. Like you give your suggestions, your advice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But ultimately you have to leave that in your children's hands and pray that, how you raise them, the fruit will come out of it,
exactly.
And so thankfully.
Boom.
I'm laughing because I got 2 girls.
I know, like it's crazy. It is crazy to consider such
Straight
a
up.
thing.
Yes.
Now-
you're like,
Ooh.
I will punch. Remember when I didn't get to punch somebody 15 years ago? I will
now.
punch somebody.
I
today.
tell him all the time, like, yo, listen, dad's been to jail and he's not afraid to go back. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
like any little dude
Like, I
coming
know
around,
yeah.
just not trying to hear it.
Question, another random question. Do you regret, and this is more for Anna because you were 19, you were 25. Do you regret getting married that young?
I don't. No, I don't. There's pieces of
You can
me.
tell him the truth, babe.
No, I don't regret because of marriage or him or anything. The only thing that I at times like think about is the fact that I didn't know who I was fully when we got married. And so a lot of our early years of marriage were insecurities. Like a lot of the turmoil was from insecurities of me not knowing who I was.
Right.
You know, like not living life in a certain, it was kind of sheltered in my bubble. Like that's how I live. So getting married and experience this whole new world was like, oh, snap. Like, and there was a lot of maturing and growing up that I had to do. So that's the only thing. I don't regret it because I'm so thankful to the Lord. Like, through the way he's encountered me, like, and walked with me, like, through all of it, it's really developed me. So I don't regret it at all. Like, I have no regrets. But the only thing I would change was to, like, have this place of, like, more of identity in myself, like, coming into marriage so that we could be stable. But the Lord has obviously gracious to us. Like, I think we both had a lot of growing to do.
Yeah.
Now, Oriah, right? Is
Yes.
the oldest. How soon after marriage did she come in?
2.5
married
years.
January 2009, 2007. So she was 2009.
So you were 21, so very young still.
So
And-
almost 3 years.
Yeah, I was. So we got married, and you know, like the traditional, like the whole, like, okay, what's next? I was like, all right, babies are next. Like, So I was like putting all the pressure on Mike. Like, okay, like it's time to have a baby. Like, you know, like the newlyweds is kind of worn off. Like it's time to have a baby. Like let's go. And he was like, absolutely not.
Oh,
And
I
I'm
wasn't
like,
trying to hear
oh wait, what?
Was this where you were up north?
No,
No,
So we were still.
we were still in Central Florida.
Okay.
So we
pastoring.
moved from Central Florida in 2011. So 2011, it would have been the beginning of 2011. So for the first 4 years of being married, we were still in Central Florida.
Gotcha.
I was just scared to death to have kids, like
because of
my past.
your past.
I never had an example that I wanted to kind of live up to or recreate, right? Like mimic. Typically guys grow up like desiring to be like their dad. I had a wildly opposite experience, right? Like I didn't want anything to do with him or be like him.
Right.
And so the thought of a young person feeling towards me the way that I felt towards him, I was like, there's no way. But I don't know how to do anything else.
Right.
There wasn't like this come follow me. I never had a living example, somebody that I could kind of glean from. So without that, now don't get me wrong, her dad was amazing, but he wasn't my dad. Right. And there wasn't a way for me to kind of watch him live in this interaction, with other, kids and stuff.
Right.
So I was just scared to death.
Anna was the baby.
I was
So
the
at that
baby.
point,
Oh, yeah.
kind of the parenting was kind of coming towards a different stage of,
Yes.
guidance.
Yeah. But even in that, like the Lord is really gracious. And I remember when Anna got pregnant, I would in prayer a lot of times just like, man, just weep before the Lord. Like if you don't help me, and what I mean by that is you have to teach me how to be a dad. Because I don't know how.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the beautiful place. Like I don't know how.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pretend like I know how. I don't know how. And there is a particular place I'm going to learn. I'm coming to you.
Right.
Right. So I need you to speak to me. I need you to help me. Right. Train me if you would. Right. Because training language is something I'm familiar with. Right.
Yeah.
Like train me if you would in being a dad. I really need your help.
Right.
And the Lord has been so amazing to help us parent.
And you've done phenomenal, which brings us to
Well, I was going to say, I mean, just the fruit is so evident in these children when you meet these children. And it's not even like you guys are like, behind them, like
Strict.
coaching them or like not even strict, but just like coaching them, like say this, go do that.
Right.
Like I've never seen you do that with your kids. And yet just the stuff that comes out of their mouths is like, we were just talking earlier. So they have this YouTube video. I'm going to link it in the show notes, but where they talk to their children, they have an honest conversation about fasting. Now, Mike's written a couple books on the topic of fasting. Incredible. And they have this video where I mean, this is something they live out. Okay. This isn't something that Mike just like wrote a book about. Like Anna and Mike fast. I know them for fasting and like just their discipline with that, and always been so encouraged by that. But their children do this. They're 12, 9, 5, like they do this and practice this. And just what they shared in that video was so only Jesus, like only Jesus, how just evident, you know, the fruit of what you guys have done and have instilled in those children. And even praying. Like I remember when they were little, like, I mean, they would pray. I was just like, is this something you teach? Like, how do you teach this? How do you do this? How do you, you know, replicate this in your children? And, you know, I guess it's not children. And I think I can't remember if I told this to you one time, like, it's not what they see us do, but what they, no, I'm sorry. It's not what we tell them, but what they see us do. And like, I've just always looked up to you as a mom, like to see that, you know, this works. When you do it and you let your children see it, it works. So anyways.
Now you married 15 years, 5 children. I know one of the biggest topics of your lives is fasting. I will admit right now, right here in front of all of you, I'm probably the worst kind of faster. Is that a term, faster?
I don't know if any of us are like great.
I don't think anybody's very good at
terrible.
it. Like, it's not something.
If there's someone that's terrible, it's right here. I've done fasts before, and I know that they're good for you. I've seen documentaries on how fasting is good for you,
which is interesting because it's a trend, right? But
here
we know it's so much more.
Can you guys explain to us and to our listeners and to our viewers, if you're listening in your car, pay attention. It's the new year. You need to listen to this. But tell us the benefits, the whys, and also not individual, but also to doing it together.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, right, because like you mentioned, fasting is something that's acceptable in culture in a variety of ways. And nobody has any problems with it whatsoever. I had a surgery back in September, and part of the stipulations was entering into surgery, I had to be fasted before I came.
Right.
Like nothing except water after midnight the night before. I had to come in fully fasted. So you have medically induced fasting. You have intermittent fasting for a variety of health benefits.
Right.
We know fasting is transformative to the body, you know, which is one of the chapters I include in the book on the practical benefits of fasting. Whenever you free your system from having to work so hard from processing a lot of the things we feed it, it's extraordinary what the body is capable of doing when it doesn't have to work so hard on digesting. All of the health benefits, and all of those are amazing. They're all amazing. But when we put fasting in the conversation of discipleship, and discipleship meaning like loving Jesus and wanting to be conformed to his image, then Jesus himself says in a variety of places, but Matthew chapter 6 is one of them, when you fast, fast this way. Right? In Matthew chapter 6, we have these 3 when you do's of being a disciple. He says, when you give, when you pray, when you fast, right? Everybody's familiar. When you pray, you know, don't pray out on the street corners, a bunch of words like these hypocrites, like go home, go into your closet, close the door, your Father who sees in secret, you know, so we have these 3 when you do's, which is almost like the idea is Jesus is giving the description of, okay, you love me, you want to follow me. Well, you're going to follow me my way. Right? Because I have a way that I expect people that follow me to follow me. And it's right. I think a lot of times we forget he's a person, right? Like in the heavens, there's a man that is alive from the dead. And he is seated and he's waiting to come again, right? But he's a person. And as a person, he has a personality, right? These things are important because like we can move him. He feels loved. Right? He says, those that love me are those that obey me. Right? And then he says the opposite. If you're unwilling to obey me, it just reveals that you don't actually love me. So I say what I say is because we have to follow him his way. And he's laid this out. And so in Matthew chapter 6, he lays out 3 beautiful things, which I find are points of controversy. A lot of times, giving,
Yeah.
right? Giving or generosity,
Yes.
prayer,
Yes.
and then fasting.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so true. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that is so true.
yeah,
It's like the three things that break a whole thing up. Like, we were good till you mentioned giving, you know.
it's like, oh, the church just wants my
Yeah,
money.
yeah, yeah.
What are you going to do with my money? It's like, but these are three things. They're when you do's,
Yes.
right? So giving, prayer and fasting. But for me, we'll come away from Matthew chapter 6, right? When you fast like this.
Right.
For me, fasting is food.
Yeah.
Right. Now you can refrain from other things,
Right.
but a biblical and a correct interpretation of fasting, the Webster's Dictionary definition of fasting is to refrain from food or particular foods, especially when done as a religious expression or demonstration.
Right.
Right. So fasting deals with food.
Right.
And the reason I say that is because unless we create the right working definition for the word, we are going to at some point miss out on a lot of the beautiful reward of fasting because it's inevitable. Fasting food is not the same thing as fasting Facebook.
Right.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like fasting Netflix is not the same thing as staying away from food.
Right.
And yes, there can be a variety of ways, and not to jump too deep into it, but you can do a water fast. You can do a liquid fast. Now, liquids wouldn't be the same as water, right? Water would be water, right?
Right.
Not to offend anyone's intelligence, right? But like water would be
Sometimes
water.
you just gotta lay it out, you know?
I just like to make it super
Yes.
simple, right? So water would be water, liquids would be liquids.
Right.
Water and coffee and tea and juice and, clear broths and liquid soups and smoothies, juicing, things of that nature.
Right.
Then you would have missing one meal. Then you would have missing sun up to sundown, which is a
Right.
couple of meals. The idea is you would just eat dinner every day. Then you would have a Daniel fast, which at times is no meats, no sweets. Other times can be just fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. Then you would have like an absolute fast, which we find in the book of Esther, chapter 4. She says, me and my team, we're going to fast for 3 days. You and your team do the same. Right. Then I will rise and go into the presence of the king. But she says we're not going to eat or drink. So it's an absolute fast. They do it for 3 days. No eating or drinking, not even water.
Wow.
Right? Crazy.
Wow.
But so there's a variety of ways that you can fast. But for us, fasting is about food.
Yeah.
And so when we lay down this definition, fasting and fasting in relationship to food has a host of rewards. But for me, I like to look at Matthew chapter 9 because this gives me the fuel that should motivate our fasting efforts. Because there's a lot of rabbit trails. There's a whole lot of like practical things or preferential things that it's just easy to get lost.
Right.
Right. In the whole maze of fasting. It's super easy to get lost. Well, why are we doing it? How much are we supposed to do it?
Right.
When do you do it? How often? What am I supposed to be praying about? Like what is supposed to be the reward? Like what do I get out of fasting? Right. All of that, it's easy to get lost. But in Matthew chapter 9, Jesus is confronted by the disciples of John and even some of the disciples of the Pharisees. And it says they come to him and they come with an indictment, right? They've been watching Jesus live. This is so funny. This is self-righteous people. They do this all the time, right? They come to him and they come to accuse him. And they're like, we've been watching you. We've been watching you. And what we've noticed as we've been watching you is that we fast and you don't. And now what should be noted is that the disciples of John and the Pharisees had a practice of fasting 2 days a week, right? 2 days a week.
Right.
That's extraordinary. I don't know a lot of people who are doing 2 days a week.
Right.
John Wesley, who founded the Methodist movement, the revival fires and all of these things, he wouldn't ordain someone to the ministry. He wouldn't lay hands on them and release them into full-time ministry unless they were willing to fast 2 days a week. Right. So the Pharisees fasted 2 days a week. The disciples of John fasted 2 days a week. And out of their own perception, their self-appraisal, their self-righteous living, they come to Jesus to accuse him. And they're like, we've been paying attention, bro. And you and your little crew, like we've been watching you and your boys and y'all don't fast.
Yeah.
Like, tell us what's up.
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, okay, cool. He says, the bridegroom is with them, so they have no reason to fast. But in the days coming, the bridegroom will be taken up from them. And then in those days, they will be found fasting. So
Jesus, find me fast.
it's actually funny.
No, but it's good. It's good. It's the word,
Yeah.
right? We want to try and act like that's not in the word. It's in the word.
Yeah.
So either we believe the word or we don't. Like,
was just-
that's
Just talking to my kids the other night, and my Emma. So Emma's 6 right now. She says, "Dad, why is it called fasting?" And I was like, "Great question." I was like, "Think about it this way: you eat in the evening, and you call it dinner." And then when you get up in the morning after a prolonged period of time, right, there's hours in between.
right.
It's actually the largest time period between any meals that happen throughout the day, right? You have breakfast, then a couple hours later, you have lunch, a couple hours later, you have dinner. Most of us are having snacks in between, just on the go, whatever. I was like, then you have dinner, and then you have a prolonged period of time. There's hours, right? Like for you guys, it's 8, 9 hours, 10 hours. You sleep a lot because you're small and you're growing. I was like, so you have 10 hours. Right? During the day, you don't have a 10-hour period between meals. I was like, so when you wake up, you break your fast, which is why it's called breakfast. You're breaking a period of fasting.
Carlos like, I was today years old when I learned that.
Breakfast. Oh my
He's
gosh.
like, the whole show has been worth it.
Thank you.
He's like, I do
Literally,
fast.
I just had like a.
See, you do fast.
I was like, that's the best way of fasting I know how to do.
Right? So I was like, babe, listen, like, so you're breaking your fast, right? So she was like, why is it called fasting? Because you're refraining from eating, right? And Jesus actually gives us the motivation as to why.
Right.
Right? There's something about his absence
Yeah.
that is supposed to set our heart on fire to find him in fasting, right? The implications is I'm addicting them to my presence by being with them.
Right.
I'm here.
right.
Like I'm near, I'm physically, tangibly among them.
Right.
But when I'm taken up from them, then they will fast.
Right.
Right? So the idea is like, he's not here. And we shouldn't be okay with that.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And fasting is one of the ways that we cultivate this Maranatha cry on the inside. Like, come Lord Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? Fasting sifts through our heart of all of the ways that we insulate and create buffers in our lives
Yeah.
to find satisfaction in other ways and places than Jesus himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And it really helps to rid the satisfaction with the things of the world to create like this groan, to fuel the fire on the inside. Like, no, wait, he's not here.
Yeah.
And his absence should do something to me.
Right.
Right? Now I get it. There's a lot of like, teaching in like, man, we fast for rewards and we fast for breakthrough and we fast for a promotion on the job and we fast for a spouse and we fast for a bigger house. And I'm not saying God doesn't use times in fasting to accomplish things.
Right.
Right. That's one of the intentions of the whole second book. There are times throughout history where it's undeniable.
Yeah.
God has asked people to fast, and
Right.
then he has taken their fasted investment as a way to literally shake the world and shape history.
Right.
That's inevitable, right? God has done that.
Right.
But really, first and foremost, we fast so that we can create a greater capacity to love Jesus and to long for his coming,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like his nearness.
Gotcha.
Wow.
So yes, fasting has a bunch of physical rewards, right? And we're in January, so it is super funny, right? It's in some ways amazing. It's in other ways nauseating to me, like how
Right.
commercialized the 21-day
my
Daniel fast in
goodness.
January. Like, yo, I'm going to go on
Dude.
21 so I can drop 21. It's like,
right.
no, right? Like I got to go on a 40 so that I can shed 40. It's like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
hold on.
What is the why behind this?
So I do get it, right? There are a bunch of benefits, right? It happens to me every time when I go on a 40-day liquid or a 40-day water. I lose anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds every single
Do
time.
you do it often?
Ooh.
Every few years or
So
Every few years.
every decade?
so just to share from a more personal place, right? I had a younger guy who's in ministry at my house recently. And he was asking me, he's like, man, what does fasting look like in your life? And I started laughing. And I said, bro, honestly, I feel like my whole life is just so absorbed into giving myself to Jesus this way that if I were to try and quantify what that looks like over a year's time, I said, it'd be super difficult. I said, but let's reflect. I said, this year alone, right? Looking at 2021, I said, this year alone, I've done 2 40s, 3 21s, a 10, 2 7s, a 5.
And these are days, by the way.
These are days.
Yeah.
Just stop right.
So like, and now these 40s can be broken up, right? They can be broken up in different ways, right? It could be like 21 liquid, 19 Daniel. It could be 20 days sun up to sundown, 20 days liquids.
Right.
It could be for 40 days. It could be 10 days liquid, 10-day water, 10-day Daniel, 10 days sun up to sundown. It could break down however.
Right.
But 2 40s, 3 21s, a 10, 2 or 3 7s, a 5. I said, and this is not even to mention, like I have a life rhythm where like in Psalm 35, David says, I humbled my soul with fasting. So he says, right? The verse starts with I. So David is saying, I've recognized the benefits or the reward in fasting. I know that to love you, Lord. This is an expectation that you have when you fast this way, right? Because my expectation is that people that love me and become my disciples are going to do these things, right? So when you do them, not if, right? So when you do them, do it this way. So I am going to look at my life in an ongoing, consistent way. I'm going to determine how I can incorporate this as a way of life. Fasting as a lifestyle. What can I do in a regular way? What can I do on a regular basis? Right. And this is super practical because it starts with the I. David said, I humbled my soul with fasting. And so I laid my calendar out and I was like, Lord, what can I do regularly? Like that I don't need some prophetic word about, right? I don't need like a hand appearing like in Daniel 4 and writing on the wall and, Daniel 5, and writing on the wall. I don't need some crazy, like clouds, forming and, shaping out dates or, like a month. Like what can I do on an ongoing way? And so I do 2 days a week. Every week, they're the same 2 days. I do sun up to sundown every 2 days. 2 days. 2 days every week. So for me, when you lay that over a year, that's 104 days, right? 52 weeks. So 104 days, then to consider, 2 40s, 3 21s, 7s and 10s and 5s, and then just the spontaneous blowing of the wind on a day-to-day basis. Because I may get up and I may feel like the Lord says, hey, like do sun up to sundown today. I don't mark all of those, right? Because I'm not trying to like resume build. Right. I'm not trying to keep up with it so that I can, flaunt these fancy numbers. Because for me, if it's not unto him, then who really cares? Right. What does it really matter?
And that's what I love, like about, and I say this again, like how you guys live your life, because a lot of people can look at that and go, oh, that's extreme, or whatever. But it's like, but you heard this man's story. You've heard their story. Like, how could you not live your life for Jesus?
And we are completely different. Even I don't know how much fasting he did before I even was. Now, this is the one growing up in church. You would think, oh, she's the one. Oh, yeah, she's used to that. Like, no. So
I was going to say, no, about you, because my excuse is I've got the kids. It's hard to coordinate. I'm always cooking meals for everybody. And then here you are fasting. And like, then you get in a bad mood about like, I'm hungry and I'm this and like, and I know I've dealt with that. I've struggled with that. Like, and I know that sounds so, I feel so convicted.
But it's real. Like it has to be real life. Like, and even I know like people hear Mike share all the time, but it's like this wisdom has come through him giving himself to a certain lifestyle. Right, exactly. It hasn't always.
Yeah, this has been 20 years.
Rainbows and butterflies that he's had to walk through. Like,
no, it's not always been great.
Place,
There's been horror stories of like doing it wrong, not having anybody to actually like help me, coach me. Like, hey, don't do this, do this. Like, hey, when you're going to break like a 21-day water fast, don't go rush off and eat a buffalo chicken salad from Chili's. Right. Which I did.
That's what I was going to say. So it's like,
oh, that sounds good.
We have to like take in like those that have actually like we're not saying like that he's written 2 books to self-promote or resume build, but it's like we've understood the importance of people who actually have, it's the power of the testimony.
Yes.
Like someone who's actually walked through and lived something. And so for me, I watched him live a certain way for so long. And how I grew up, like in church, like fasting wasn't something, I mean, it's in the Bible. You would think it would be something like everyone was talking about, you would be more educated on, like have more, had no clue, like no idea. And so when the Lord he started giving himself to the Lord this way, and the Lord started revealing himself in this way, I was watching. Obviously, I'm in the house. Like I'm, with young babies, like they're being raised. And so I had a lot of excuses. Oh, I'm pregnant. I'm, nursing. I'm this, all these things. So finally it came to a point where I was in that place of just really encountering the Lord for myself, and just watching him, like, and the way the Lord was just so evident, like it provoked a jealousy in me, like like we're talking about like like my kids, watching my kids fast provokes a jealousy in me. Like there's something that they are like capturing and getting from the Lord that I have not seen. So I'm like, Lord, like help me in this. And so how I like to describe it is like, even when I began fasting, like it first was a discipline. Like it had to be discipline first. So I would just watch Mike. Mike would be like, I feel like the Lord is speaking to me. And I'm like, okay, I haven't heard nothing about fasting. Like he has not said that to me.
Like, are you sure?
But I was like, what can I do? Okay, like I'm going to fast with him. Like it's going to be, if I have someone to do it with, like let it be a discipline that's like developed in me. And I watched how that discipline became a desire. So then I was like, oh, I want to do this. Like I did this once already. Like, okay, I can do this again. And there's like a desire started to build, and then it became like a delight. And now I feel like life now for me, it's like I delight to do whatever the Lord asks of me, And it's like, I think we see like other people's bigger picture, like we hear the testimony of the big things and we are like, oh, we can never get there. But it starts with like the small, like the small things, like he's saying, like what day can you give him just practically, like what day, and allow that, like the Lord will take. And even if it is like for weight loss benefits, let it be that. Give yourself to the Lord. And like if that drives you, like he will definitely begin to turn things, like if you give your, does that make sense? So that's kind of been my journey, like, and it hasn't been easy at all. Like,
do you guys fast together?
So that's what I was going to comment on. The first 5 years of us being married, we didn't fast together.
Not at all.
I remember I would live it, and this isn't like in some self-righteous, like, I'm living it, my wife is not.
No.
Like, so I would live it.
To do it.
Yeah, like I just had this jealousy, man. Like God really like rocked my world. I just knew that I was supposed to live this way. I was trying to figure it out. I was having great episodes. I was having bad episodes. Again, I did the buffalo chicken salad after 21 days water fast. Got annihilated. Had the worst 4 or 5 hour period of my entire life.
Wow.
Don't do that, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? Like don't do that, by the way. But so after 5 years, I remember 5-6 years, I would just ask her every time, like, hey, this is what I feel like the Lord is saying. Do you want to do it with me? No. Okay, great. So even like, she's referencing, I'm at home, she's pregnant, I'm cooking meals, being chiseled down on these long liquid fasts, like I'm not eating. I'd sit with her, because fasting is more about mastery than it is about avoidance, right? Now, if you have to avoid until you can master, then that's great,
absolutely.
Right? Like some of us are like, man, if I go on a fast,
That
like
is
I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I can't be around other people that are eating. Like I can't walk past the pantry. Like, oh my God, if I walk by the refrigerator, like, like the leftovers, they're just calling out. Like, it's like, no. If you have to avoid until you can master, that's one thing. But the goal of fasting should be to master,
Right.
not to avoid things, to believe, because we have real power.
Right.
Right? Like we're a spirit people. And so the spirit has actually given us power to conquer this fleshly life. Right? Like if you walk in the spirit, live by the spirit, you don't have to gratify the lustful desires of the flesh.
Right.
So I remember 5-6 years, we wouldn't fast together. Yeah. I would just live it. And I would say, Lord, I know you're going to do something. I know you're going to speak to her one day. But it was never like this thing I held over her or like made her feel bad or like, like it tainted the quality of our relationship. None of those things. Yeah. And then I remember one day she was like, let me know the next fast you're going to do because I'm going to do it with you. I was like, okay, cool. So I think it's beautiful what she's saying, right? If you don't know what to do,
Yeah.
Find someone that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? It's funny to me that we implement this in almost every space of life except spirituality.
Absolutely.
Right? Like we are resistant to the max in spirituality. But like when you start a job, they put you in a process of training.
Yeah.
Because you have to learn the ropes.
Yeah.
You have to be
Exactly.
educated on how you're actually going to integrate into a company, an organization, and begin to contribute
Absolutely.
or to help facilitate the mission and vision of a corporation or an organization.
Right.
Right? When you go to the gym, I used to be a personal trainer. People show up to the gym and they'd be like, hey, listen, I need your help because you know what you're doing. I obviously don't.
Right.
Like, I'm going to use your wisdom and history in order to reach the goals or the destination that I
Right.
desire.
Right.
Right? So if you don't know what you're doing, find someone that knows what they're doing
Right.
and follow them.
Right.
Right? Like Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ.
Right.
And so she was like, I'm just going to do everything that you do. And so we would just do it together and we would fast and pray together. And seasons of imitation, I like to say it this way, like seasons of imitation should lead to initiation.
I love that.
That
Right?
is
Like
awesome.
Seasons of what?
Like
Imitation.
imitation should
Imitation.
lead to initiation.
Dude,
That's so good.
Right? Like the goal is not to just mimic somebody forever.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But to be grateful for seasons of investment,
Yeah.
impartation, where we're instructed by others, where we can glean from their life, where we learn from them. But not to be so codependent where we don't
Right.
know how to live if they're not around.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Like we want to learn, we want to be grateful for the investment, we want to imitate while we're supposed to imitate because imitation is right for a season.
Right.
But
Right.
imitation should lead to initiation.
Yeah.
Right? Like Elisha
Yeah.
says, where's the God of Elijah?
Right.
Now I
right.
want to learn how to walk with you for myself.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was one of the cool things about watching the video with your kids is hearing them say, you know, oh, the Lord spoke to me and I have to start this fast. And you're like, okay. And then I loved how you were like, well, you know, I'll do it with you and
Yep.
all of it. Like, it was just so awesome to see that. Like, that it's them. Like, it's not like you're like, all right, you're going to fast for 2 weeks now. You know, it's like at some point,
Yeah.
it's exactly what you're saying. It has
Yeah.
led to this initiation and what a discipline for them to have in their life now to carry, you know, for forever.
Yeah.
Like, just how amazing.
And we just invited them in.
yeah.
Like, so obviously they watch us live and, you know, they would ask from time to time. I remember years ago, I was grilling steaks for my kids. And at the time it was only Araya, Josiah, and Emma. And Araya would have been like 5. And we sat down at the dinner table and she was like, well, Dad, where's yours? And I was like, oh, babe, I don't have one. And she was like, why? And I was like, I'm not going to have one tonight. And she's like, but you love steak. And I was like, oh, I do. I was like, Daddy does. And she's like, then why aren't you going to eat one? And I was like, because I'm fasting. She was like, oh, well, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I'm not eating for Jesus. And she was like, why would Jesus not want you to eat? And she was like, I like eating. She's like, I like steak. She's like, I know you like steak. And I was like, you're right. And she was like, why would Jesus not want you to have a steak? And I thought really quickly to myself, I was like, Lord, if you don't help me explain this to my
Yes.
5-year-old, like we've got a critical moment
Yeah.
right here.
Right. This is
For
going to be a
sure.
core memory.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
like this is a critical moment. Like if
Yes.
you don't help me explain this to her in a way that she's going to be able to get it and immediately apply it,
Mm-hmm.
then we could have like a future of trying to recreate, right? Like a different idea of what this is supposed to be about if this goes
Yes.
wrong. And I really felt like the Lord like helped me. And I said, babe, okay, how about this? I said, fasting is more about attention. And she was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, we give our attention to a lot of other things. I said, you give your attention to your schoolwork, you give your attention to your iPad, to watching movies, to playing games. I was like, we give a lot of attention to food, making meals, eating together. I was like, fasting is about taking our attention away from these other things and giving it more intentionally to Jesus.
Right.
And saying, I will stay away from these things so that I can pay more attention to you. And she was like, oh. She's like, okay. She's like, so you're not eating, right? And I was like, no, I'm not eating right now. And she was like, so I could not have dessert tonight. And I was like, yeah. She's
You
like,
could.
and I could not have dessert and I could talk to Jesus. And I was like, yeah.
Yes, you can.
And I was like, you absolutely could do that. Right. But we've invited them in
Yes.
and we've not put limitations on them.
Yeah.
And it's super scary.
It is.
Yes.
It's
Because
really-
so our oldest just this past summer finished her first 40, right? So we did a 40. We were getting ready for a conference that we were hosting in Chicago.
joyfully too, like joyfully, like
She did 20 days sun up to sundown and then 20 days Daniel.
Wow.
And it was really nuts.
and she was running cross country.
Practicing cross country. I mean, it was crazy.
And her health remained.
Remained.
I think as a parent, right?
Wow.
I am so many times trying to protect them
Yes.
from things.
Yes.
But, really understanding, because I remember when my 9-year-old, he did a liquid fast with me earlier in the year. And he had prayed about it and he felt like he wanted to do 5 days liquid. And when he came back to me to tell me what he wanted to do, I was like, all right, so what do you feel like the Lord said to you? He's like, all right, Dad, I'm going to do 5 days. And I was like, all right, 5 days? Like, cool, game. Like, let's get it. And I was like, 5 days of what? And he was like, liquids. And I was like, oh man. I was like,
Are you sure?
oh no.
I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And this coming from the guy, right? That like
Right,
writes the
yeah.
books and
Right.
has these pictures where I look like Skeletor, because I'm like, 130 something pounds. And it's like, oh my goodness, 5 days. And I remember on day 2, because I told him, all right, let's do it on spring break. You're going to be home, right? I don't want no problems with the school.
Right.
Like
Malnutrition.
Getting
oh
no
my
calls.
gosh, like why is your kid not eating? Why didn't you
Right.
pack him a lunch? It's
Right,
like,
right.
well, my dad said I'm not eating today. It's like,
It can go south real quick.
I don't need that. So I was like, let's wait for spring break, right? It can be practical too, right? Let's wait for spring break. You can do it with me. I'm going to be on a liquid. And I remember Anna had taken the girls out to SeaWorld that day. And he was like, Dad, I don't want to go. He's like, where are you going to be? I was like, I'm going to be home. I was like, I'm working from home. He's like, can I stay with you? I was like, yes. He's like, Dad, I don't want to go. Like, man, they're going to be eating popcorn. They're going to be drinking slushies. Like, I don't want to. Hey, if you have to avoid, right, in order to do it successfully, avoid. And he's like, I don't want to go. I was like, all right, you can stay with me. And I remember in the afternoon, he ran into my office and he broke down crying. And he was sitting on the couch and he's like, Dad, this is hard.
Oh.
And he's like, I'm hungry. And I was like, oh man. And I'm like ripped to shreds on the inside. Like I'm getting
course.
destroyed because everything in me just wants to be like, it's okay. Like you can break, like it's been
Go
2
eat.
days.
Yeah.
You've
Right,
done
right.
great.
You've done
Like-
more than we thought you were going to.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I remember the Lord speaking to me and asking me like, I'm helping him, right? And I care more about him than you do, right? And like don't try to hide him or preserve him, like protect him from the cost of loving me this way. And I was like, man, and whether it's staying away from a meal or two and the cost of loving him that way.
Yeah.
Whether it's from one day him running into my office, and maybe it's not from the cost of fasting for 2 days, but maybe he's going to run into my office one day and say, hey, Dad, I feel like I heard from God and I'm moving to another country to go be a missionary and to go bring this unreached people group like the gospel.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go and I'm going to give my life for them. Right? Am I going to try to protect him from the cost?
Yeah.
Of like loving Jesus this way.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
a parent, and it was just like, man, and just, so a few things were happening, right? As a dad looking at my son and realizing how much it was hurting me to watch him hurt, wanting to sacrifice,
Yeah.
Yeah.
wanting to like love Jesus this way. I got a brand new perspective of how the Lord sees me, right? Out of this, like at times when it's like all the Lord cares about is whether you finish or not.
Yeah.
Right? Like all God is interested in is like, well, did you get it done? Oh, you failed? Like, oh, you weren't able to accomplish?
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at you, you're suffering. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you're weak. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, no.
A
Like,
lot of us have that perspective of God.
Yeah.
That mistaken perspective.
Yep.
it's like, man, Lord, if I feel this way about him, and I'm an imperfect dad,
Yeah.
right? And if I feel this way about him, then how do you feel about me?
Right.
Like I need a radical paradigm shift,
Yeah.
to where I can realize like you're with me, helping me in the
Yeah.
place of my sacrifice, right? And it's all like you see it in the context of love,
Right.
right? Like it revolutionized my fasting journey when I felt the Lord say, "Will you love me this way?"
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
The terms were totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because something in fasting is refraining from satisfaction this way in order to be satisfied in a more ultimate way,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
right? Like lesser things to make room to be satisfied by more ultimate things.
Mm.
But we've just invited our kids in.
Mhm.
And so now, yeah, we do. We fast together as much as we're able to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I say that because
Majority
we want to
is,
do every fast together.
Yeah.
And I trust that she hears from
Yeah.
the Lord. She trusts that I hear from the
Mhm.
Lord. So whether that's whatever in an ongoing way, and then every time we just in a practical way, we tell the kids like, hey, we're about to start one again.
Mhm.
Pray about joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you guys pray about it and you feel like you're supposed to join us for the whole thing or a part of the time, like whatever you feel you hear, just do that.
Yeah.
We're on one all right now as a family.
Mhm.
And, some are doing Daniel, some are doing liquids, some of this, some is that, and it's
Right.
it's just crazy. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's really just wild.
Honestly, I'm
Awesome.
amazed and hats off to you guys that not only can you do this together, learn from each other, but also it trickles down to
Mhm.
the people that we as parents need to bring up.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah.
Seriously. And I know you've written 2 books,
Mhm.
right, on fasting. And can we say there's a third one?
I'm going to write a third one.
There's a third one
I'm
coming.
going to write a third one.
But where can people find these books? And again, like you said earlier, it's not we're trying to get famous or whatnot.
Yeah.
No, it's
But
not promotion, but at the same time,
you
people
are-
need resources on
Yeah.
this.
You are
So it's very
professionals in
practical.
this. And I mean, honestly, if you guys want to get these books, where can they find them?
So you can find them everywhere where books are, whether Amazon, if you're a physical reader, Amazon or our website, burningones.org.
Yes.
Or if you're a
which we'll
digital
link.
reader, obviously Kindle, iBooks,
Mhm.
everywhere where books are found.
And the
Awesome.
title of the book is just fasting.
Yeah, we're not trying to trick you with the title.
Yeah.
Fasting
Yes.
for the first one, Fasting Volume 1, and then Fasting Volume 2.
Mhm.
And it'll be Fasting Volume
Volume
3
3.
for the third
Yeah.
one.
Yes. And I mean, I know Mike and Anna have so many resources, like we said, and I'll put those up in the show notes for you guys. But if you could give our couples watching just a piece of advice, a message from your marriage and what you've learned and something that you could pass on to them. And I know that's loaded because you probably have so many nuggets of wisdom that you can share. But just something that you can leave our listeners with, an encouragement, just that you've overcome from your marriage or that's been helpful in your marriage.
Sure. So I'll start because I know I'm better on the fly.
Yes.
Anna and I are
Sorry,
so
Anna.
different. When I asked you for the questions, it was more for her than it was for me. We're so different in the way.
Same
that
here,
we're just-
by the way. Same here. I'm the cooler one. She's not.
Okay.
So she's like, "Well, did they give you questions? Like, do we know what they want to talk about?" I was like, "Who cares? Like, let's just go." She's
We're
like,
just
"No,
chit-chatting.
I care." She's like, "I need to know." So we're just
Oh my
we're
god.
totally different. I'm great on the fly. She prepares herself. It's amazing. So I would say, right. So 2 things. The first one, super quick. Marriage is work, but it's worth working.
Oh, that's good.
Right. It's work. There's no days off.
Yeah.
The grass always seems greener on the other side of the fence. Right. Always.
Yeah.
But it's work, but it's also worth working.
That's so good.
And then the second thing, I would say, create a vision of the end
Mhm.
and work it backwards.
That's
Right.
good.
A lot of times, because a lot of times the value system that God gives us for our life together, it doesn't reap immediate rewards.
Yeah.
And what the tendency is a lot of times is to want to make day-to-day adjustments so that we can see things in a more immediate way.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times the values that God gives us, like what is our life together going to be built on?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have these shared values.
Yeah.
And these shared values are actually what we're investing into our kids, that one day it's going to be amazing to watch them, kind of separate from the house, but take the values of the house and begin to cultivate them in another house with a different group of people, right? And like kind of keep it going. So for me, I would say you got to get a vision of the end. And the vision of the end, a lot of times, is found in the shared values.
That's good.
What's our relationship going to be built on? Who are we?
Yeah.
The identity as individuals, the identity as a couple, the identity as parents. Who are we? What are we about?
Right.
And keep investing.
Yeah.
Like just cannonball into the deep end of difficult and just keep going.
That's so good.
Now, that doesn't sound like super fancy, but a lot of what we are experiencing now is not at all what it was in the beginning days. Like the thought of sitting around with our kids and having like Bible studies or times in prayer or like worship times together or inviting them into a fast. Circus. Like, I mean, Ringling Brothers.
When they were 3 and 1.5. And
I mean, we'd put them to bed and just cry. Like
we're failing.
We're not the only ones. Okay.
Like, what are we doing?
We're failing.
Oh my Lord, is this even going anywhere?
Yeah.
Like, are you little troublemakers even saved? Like, do you even know
Will
Jesus?
you ever know Jesus one day?
Like,
That's
we're gonna
where
have
I'm at right now. Will you ever know Jesus?
Like, we're having a come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
Like everybody's getting a spanking. You're all going to bed. Forget this. Like, so I would say just keep investing in where you want to be.
Yeah.
There's no easy road. You just have to just cannonball into the deep end of difficult.
That's so good.
And just day by day, like keep investing.
Yeah.
Just keep going. Even if you don't see the rewards, even if you're not reaping the harvest, even if the consequences of your investment aren't necessarily felt the way that you desire, just keep going. Stay with the values.
Yeah.
Because
That's good.
like Galatians says, don't grow weary in well-doing,
Yeah.
right? If you keep going,
Yes.
you're going to reap a harvest,
Yes.
right? Like the writer of Hebrews says, you're in need of perseverance,
Yes.
right? Like you need endurance,
Yes.
right? Like sometimes we need a fresh energy to keep doing the same thing
Yes.
rather than getting exhausted in the same thing and wanting to like switch up the formula or the recipe.
Yeah.
Like get the recipe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost
Yeah.
like for those of us that have like moms or grandmas or relatives, like get the recipe.
Yes.
You know the recipe works. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like don't try to find different ingredients. Don't try to like
Right.
switch it up. Like get the recipe. Figure out what the value system is. The value system is the recipe.
Yeah.
Lay it down and stay consistent. You know what I mean? Like just keep going.
Yep.
And then the Lord will give you these beautiful glimpses along the way. Like, oh, it is working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, like you are doing something.
Right.
You know, like
You do love Jesus.
like, oh my goodness.
You are a kind human.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Just like
course it is.
it was because it's like
It always
you're
sounds better when it's
trying
your
to
idea.
create a culture. Culture isn't created overnight, and that's something we
that's
just
good.
sat with a young couple with a new baby. Like,
Because you either intentionally create culture or by default create culture by your unwillingness to create a culture.
right?
But either way,
That's
you
so
end
You're
up with a
reaping-
culture.
You're reaping something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good.
So
That's
Guys,
really good.
well, what a
Thank
treat.
you. Thank
What
you
a
so
ride.
much. Thank you.
Honestly.
I know this episode's a little longer, guys, but so rich.
Yeah.
And like, who cares about length? Like, just so rich. Thank you for taking the time to come out here and just pour and be so vulnerable and like just sharing what
Thank you,
God has done in
guys.
your life. And we are so excited to continue to see what God is going to continue to do through everything you are doing, but more than everything you're doing, who you are as people. So thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
guys.
Thank you. Seriously. I know we talked about the book and promoting the book, but where can people find you guys?
So, I mean, I guess we live in an interesting moment, right, in history. I guess anywhere where people can be found. You can find us.
So Instagram,
Burning
Instagram.
ones. You can find Burning Ones on Instagram.
Yes.
So Anna and I have a variety of pages, whether
YouTube.
personally, all these, public profile pages that people have. We have those too.
Okay.
So you can search Michael Dow, Anna Dow, Burning Ones.
Awesome.
We're on YouTube and Instagram, our website and Facebook.
Perfect.
And, all the normal
we'll link
places.
All
those
this info will
things.
be on your screen. But again, Mike, Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really blessed. But from us to you guys, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Again?
We're still in the New Year thing.
My
Sorry.
goodness.
Thank you for
there
listening.
has to be a rule. You can't say Happy New Year
Well, it's
after
still-
like January 5th. We're done. We're done with
He's
Happy New
happy
Year.
about it. He's legitimately happy about
Happy
the new
first
year.
month of the year.
Yes, let's go.
To all our listeners, again, if you like Co-Called, if you want to share Co-Called, please share Co-Called
Yes.
on all your social media platforms.
yes,
Give us a
yes.
like, subscribe on YouTube, whatever you can do. And then leave us a comment if you like today's podcast. If you want it, if there's topics that you want to listen to, Mike and Anna Dow have many other topics too, by the way. We can have them back here on our podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Co-Called, a podcast for the modern marriage. Find us on Instagram at Co-Called Podcast and share it if you like it.